In a market awash with cinema lenses, for me, the Thypoch Simera-C lenses stand out from the others. It's not because they're the best you can buy. They aren't. But what they do in such a small form factor and price is remarkable. You're going to see a lot of footage with these lenses throughout the video, even when it's not directly relevant to what I'm talking about, because after all, the image you get from them is what you want to see. Well, it's what I want to see anyway, and it's better than looking at my face constantly. A lot of it is my usual street photography filming style, but there is a little bit of more formal, controlled stuff where needed. You won't see any charts, as this isn't a technical review. It's a real-world use review based on my 7 months of using them. Oh yes, of course, you will see lots of cat shots. As the footage was shot over a long time, I can't always remember which focal length was used for many of the shots, and as there's no electronic connection, there's no metadata to let me know. But if I 100% know for sure which lens it is, it will say so on screen. When I review products, I have to really like them to commit the time it takes to make one of my videos. The other factor I think about is whether I'll actually still be using the product 6 months, a year, even 2 years later. New gear often feels like a novelty. You're using it because it's new, but then you will just drift back to your favourites. And this is what I thought would happen with these. I'd shoot some test footage and put a video together, but that's not what happened. This video was supposed to be released at the end of last year, but I had to take a long break from making videos for personal reasons. But in that time, I kept on choosing to use them. There was always one of them on my favourite camera, the Sony Alpha 1, which says a lot. These aren't the very sharpest or optically perfect lenses that I own, and being cine lenses, they of course don't have my much loved autofocus, but they have something else, something special. When I shoot with them, I feel so much more connected to my camera than when I'm using my fantastic Sony GM glass with autofocus. Shooting with them feels so natural and instinctive. These are very much handheld lenses for me. One of my favourite all-time E-mount lenses is the SLR Magic 35mm f1.2 Cine Prime. They're not at all sharp, but they're packed full of character, mechanically lovely, and a real pleasure to shoot with. The Simera-Cs feel a lot like them size-wise, but are superior in every way. They aren't what I call vintage-looking lenses, but they still have a very pleasing character. I made a video last year about Nice's Athena cine lenses, and I love them. Compared to traditional cine lenses, they are small, light, and pretty affordable. They're pretty fast too, with all but the 2 widest being T1.9. They are also optically really impressive, with a very clean look, a blank canvas if you will, all for around £1,000 plus VAT each. They have become very popular for these reasons. But enter the Thypoch Simera-Cs. Thypoch is a sister brand of DZO Film, and I've heard great things about DZO, but I've had zero experience with their lenses. The Simera-Cs are rehoused versions of Thypoch's M-mount stills lenses, which first came out in late 2023. The Simera-C lenses are fast, light, small, and are pretty cheap for what they are. At the time of this video, each lens costs around £650, excluding VAT. There are currently 5 lenses in the lineup: 21, 28, 35, 50 and 75mm, and they all have a T1.5 aperture and weigh roughly half the weight of the Nice Athenas, which is really impressive for such fast lenses. I have the Sony E-mount versions, but there is also an M-mount option. I expect there'll be some other mounts. The M-mount though is arguably the best one to get, and is what I should have gotten, as it can be adapted to any mirrorless mount with a simple adapter. And as I own many other brands of cameras, it's a shame I can't use these with them. Oh well. The 3 middle lenses are all the same physical length, but the 21 and 75mm are slightly longer. Thankfully the focus and iris gears are all in the same place across the range. They're very well made, and are constructed from aerospace grade aluminium alloy. The mechanics are really smooth and have the right amount of resistance. The focus, of course, has hard stops and is a lovely 210 degrees. The 300 degrees of most cinema lenses is too much for handheld focusing, but 210 is totally doable, making manual focusing a dream. It doesn't mean I always nail focus, but I get close, most of the time. They all take 62mm filters, apart from the 75mm lens, which rather annoyingly needs a 67mm filter. It's a shame that Thypoch didn't just make them all 67mm. I don't like to carry multiple filter sizes with me, so I've put 62 to 67mm step-up rings onto the other ones, so they all match now. Just can't use my official lens caps anymore. Whilst I didn't use them with DJI's Ronin 4D, they would pair up really well and without needing to use any counterbalance weight. They all have 16 iris blades, which is fantastic, so there's nice circular bokeh circles throughout the range. You get some cat's eyes as expected, wide open on the edges, stopping down to T2.8 and they look perfectly circular. The bokeh circles are pretty similar across the range, unlike the Nisi Thiners, where a couple of them have onion rings and some other issues. I didn't see this with the Simera-Cs. There's also minimal chromatic aberration with them. The minimum focus is good, not great, but decent. I would love to have had a closer focus with the 28 and 35mm. They're the ones that disappointed me. But overall they focus closer than what I would have expected for rehoused rangefinder lenses, which usually are rubbish for minimum focus. I did a field of view and close focus comparison with my mum, but that was before I received the 21mm, but it will still give you an excellent reference for comparing the lenses. The bokeh is lovely and smooth, not too busy, the flares are very controlled and pleasing, and the colour matching is pretty close across the range. Not perfect, but close.
I won't move, okay? You won't move. I promise. Oh, I felt the edge. I felt the edge.
The biggest technical flaw is the focus breathing, which isn't great. In fact, it's quite bad if you rack between the focus extremes. But of course, this is something you're rarely going to do in a shot. For smaller focus racks, and especially when shooting handheld, it didn't bother me that much. I was kind of expecting this, as it's pretty common with stills lenses, and these are rehoused stills lenses. Sony's 35mm f1.4 GM is worse, but you can at least remove that with the electronic focus breathing control of the cameras, although that does crop in on the image. The Nisi Athena's focus breathing control is actually really impressive across the range, and it's really only their 35mm here that has the problematic bokeh circles. lenses that I use the most were the 21, 35 and 75mm. I love to go from wide to tight with my filming, and the 35mm lens tended to live on the Sony Alpha 1 by default, as it's my most used focal length. Although, as I said, I really wish it had a closer minimum focus. The Alpha 1 is such a great camera to use with these. I love primes, I love shooting with them, but they are limiting, especially for my street photography style. Zoom lenses are much easier. The Alpha 1 can shoot 8K full frame, which these lenses easily resolve for, as well as full frame 4K up to 120p. I tend to shoot at 4K 50p most of the time for B-roll, so I can have slow motion or normal speed at 25p when editing. But in 4K 50p you can also go into Super 35mm mode on the Alpha 1, giving me a 1.5 times crop. And there's also clear image zoom, which will give me an even tighter crop, but still maintaining the 4K resolution. Here, using my lovely Archie to demonstrate, this is the 50mm lens, full frame. This is now switched to Super 35mm mode. I'm getting a field of view of around 75mm. Then, if I use clear image zoom, I can get an additional crop of up to 1.5 times, giving me around a 112mm field of view. This is why I was so often on the 21mm to start with, as I could get a roughly 31mm field of view in Super 35, and then in clear image zoom, almost a 50mm. Of course, it doesn't optically have the same depth of field as a true 50mm, so I would still switch lenses frequently, but if it meant missing a shot, I would hold off. Missing shots is never good, but it's not always your fault. Sometimes for a project, you don't have the budget to get what you need. It could be something complex, exotic, or just very simple. In these situations, Storyblocks has helped me many times. And to help you, I've also contributed footage to them. Storyblocks does not use AI content and is pushing hard against it with its restock collections, which capture human emotions and stories that AI cannot replicate. What's also great about Storyblocks are the unlimited downloads for one predictable subscription cost. And it's not just video either. There are templates, music, sound effects, images, and more. To sign up, head to storyblocks.com/pbloom or click the link in the description. Thanks guys for sponsoring this video. When I was filming in London, because of the size and weight of the Simera-Cs, I was able to carry all of them in a sling bag. It's such a lovely way to go out and shoot. As I said, I don't shoot charts, so I can't show you the edge-to-edge sharpness. All I can say, it looked pretty decent to me, especially if you stop down to T2.8. More wide open than that, it's not as sharp across the whole image, which is pretty common. I certainly didn't notice any issues when looking back at my footage. Using these lenses so much over the last 7 months has made me fall in love with manual focusing again. Yes, it's more challenging than using Sony's autofocus, but as I mentioned at the start, shooting handheld with these in manual focus makes me feel really connected to the camera, and it makes me think much more about the shot. I don't always get the focus perfect all the time, but this is in fact part of what I love so much about this type of filming. It's those moments, especially when filming people, when focus is lost slightly in a very natural way. If you have autofocus issues like pulsing or jumping to the wrong subject, it renders the shot unusable. But losing focus occasionally with manual focus is totally acceptable as long as it's in a subtle way, and of course as long as you find it again. Sony cameras still have the best video autofocus, but to get the best results, you really need to understand how it works and be in full control of it. I call it manual autofocus, and I have a 2-part masterclass on this channel that's a must-watch if you use Sony cameras with video autofocus. By now you can probably tell how much I like these lenses. They're such a pleasure to use and can produce gorgeous results. But I do hope in future lenses Thypoch can reduce that focus breathing and improve the minimum focus of the 28 and 35mm. Those are really my only complaints. The big question is, now that this review is finally finished and out there, will I continue to use them? What do you think?